My name is Paul Nix. I'm from the Time Repair Corporation, and the Time Repair Corporation is a Helsinki-based startup that is focused on sustainability and education. Effectively, we exist so that no one has to be afraid of the future. We want to work on education and empowerment to make sure that people have some next steps to take, no matter who they are, no matter where they come from. So that's me.
And my name is Alexandra Kojabashi. I'm the founder and CEO of PersEd, which is a Lebanon-based enterprise for coaching, training, and consultancy for personal education and 21st century learning and skills. So everything that we do is to empower young minds to be who they are and all they can become. There's so much potential around us. And there's so many things to learn and to experience and to explore. And the entire idea behind PersEd is really to instigate those skills and this mindset that are at the core of the 21st century to not just survive, but thrive in the era that we're living in. And Paul and I have just started something that is called
Interchange.
Interchange. So Paul, what is Interchange? How did it start? Let's tell them more about that.
I think that's a great place to start. All right, so I had been looking online specifically to reach out to and find like-minded individuals, people who were already reaching out and trying to make changes in the world. And one of the things I'd actually found, there was a blog dealing with sustainability. And one of the entries on it was talking about this amazing young woman who was just doing ridiculous things in bringing people together. Yeah, I see it. I see you blushing. I only speak the truth. It was talking about these amazing strides in soft skills and in growing a sort of a grassroots movement toward empowering people. And that's exactly at the core of what I want to do with sustainability. So I thought to myself, it's worthwhile, even though we're not exactly in the same field, we're doing a lot of the same thing and trying to start the same conversations. So I tuned into one of the live streams that she was doing, and I introduced myself. I asked to meet and start talking, not with any specific goal in mind, but just to reach out and connect. And from our discussions about our own work on our own enterprises, on what we see the world becoming, the potential out there, we were able to come up with this idea for something bigger than the two, which we call Interchange. And the idea is that because we've got global technologies connecting us, because we've got the possibility of connecting like-minded people and really opening up this conversation, we should get started right away. And the most effective way to do that was this. So we're starting with a discussion that will take big subjects that are at the core of the way we live our lives today and looking at them through the different lenses. To start with, Alexandra will be representing the view of lifelong learning and soft skills, and I'll be looking at things through the lens of engineering and sustainability and how that actually impacts their lives. And so that's the idea. And we want it to grow. So if you've got something to contribute, bother us, contact us, get in touch. And by all means, you can start commenting right now. There's no reason not to start the conversation, even if I'm kind of blah, blah, blah. So to get things started, we are going to have an introduction for today's talk, and I'll throw that right across to Alexandra.
Paul, you're not blah, blah, blahing, you're saying some amazing stuff. And these are things that that we need to hear, that we need to be aware of. And what you've said is an example of what communities mean and how powerful the coming together of people can be. So today's topic will be about just that. And we felt when we were talking, we felt that it was fitting because it happened with the mindset of coming together, of talking, of exchanging, of talking at the intersection of fields, of disciplines, beyond borders. And this is how the Interchange started. It's a mastermind, the coming together of two people, the exchange of thoughts beyond borders, beyond any kind of limitations, so that we can inspire change and we can inspire international dialogue. And this international dialogue will start with the topic of communities. What are communities? Communities are groups of people. They have perhaps a common purpose, perhaps they don't. They come together in a specific time, in a specific space, so there's context to it. There is an outcome that comes from it. So we have the meaning of communities and how things function from within. We have the framework of communities and how they come together, how they come to be formed, and eventually what they could lead to in terms of imagining the future, in terms of taking care of the environment, in terms of being conducive to personal, professional, to academic, to any kind of development and growth. So communities are indeed very powerful. And I'm not going to talk a lot about the topic at large, because we're going to dive straight in with the real deep conversation that we're going to have today with Paul. So Paul, I just want to ask you, from your experience and from what you've done before, your work, and the Time Repair Corporation, what's the connection between grassroots movement and communities? How can they help each other? How can one contribute to the development of the other? And how can we really tap into the power of communities and or grassroots movements?
That's a really good focus. I think that the most important place to start is perspective. All of us look at things a little bit differently. And I myself, when you boil me down to my base component parts, I'm an engineer. And for an engineer, you look at needs and you look at resources. So communities, that's just a description of all of us, essentially. And when you actually look at the way that we interact, all of us are constantly interconnected. And to demonstrate that, to really talk about that interconnection, because that's the key of the grassroots movement, is empowering people to actually connect to one another actively. And the whole idea that we're not connected in the first place, that's kind of a myth. So earlier today, and this is proof that I'm in Finland, earlier today I was out walking in the forest, and we have beautiful forests here in Finland. A lot of aspen, a lot of birch, a lot of fir trees, and you find mushrooms there all summer long and during the fall. Beautiful for mushrooming. But what you don't see under the surface is that all of those mushrooms are grown together. They're all interconnected. And the little mushroom that pops up here and there, that's just a tiny part of the organism. The trees are connected by those mushrooms, by those mycelial networks. And whether we see it or not, we're all connected too. When one of us does one thing in society, it affects everybody else, whether we see the impact or not. So we have to start looking at that more actively and knowing that when we reach out to one another through grassroots movements, for example, when we empower ourselves to start reaching out to people, as I did with Alexandra, that's the key of a grassroots movement right there. That's all it takes, is sort of strengthening those bonds between people. And those bonds already exist. All of you already has a network, and that network connects to everyone else's network, whether we know it or not. It's just reaching out about the things that matter and saying, hey, I'm starting this right now. I'm going to be doing this today, this weekend, tomorrow, in a month, and getting people involved actively. Now we have no excuse. We've proven with COVID that you can connect anywhere on the planet and you can start these conversations. And I think that that's the real key, connecting communities and the grassroots movement, is just being aware that what you do has power and has an impact. So when you're actually looking at this kind of interconnection, the real key is to sort of be aware of what's necessary in your own mindset. And ideally, Alexandra can talk a little bit more about one's personal perspective. What?
Yeah.
Please go ahead. I wanted to check and see what you believe.
This is the internet delay. This is the connection delay.
What do you believe that the mastermind model has to lend to this discussion?
So you said two things that are very important, and I thank you for the first one, which is the word connection, because I absolutely love this word. My motto in life, and PersEd's motto, is connect the dots and connect the learning dots. And we humans are dots on this planet, and we are all connected. We just need to be aware of those connections that we have, in the same way that the ideas, the thoughts that we have are also all connected together. And that's how innovation and creativity comes, from this coming together of these ideas and thoughts, and from the coming together of people as well. And from a personal experience and from the experience of PersEd, because we've been working on the masterminds for the past 4 years, the mastermind, I'm not talking about the game, the code breaking game here, where you have to guess the colors and all of that. That's completely different. So we're talking here about this coming together of individuals. And it's called mastermind for a very specific reason, because alone you're just one mind, but with a group of people and within a community, you are a mastermind. And that's absolutely wonderful. And the way it started, the first time actually the term mastermind was evoked, and that was way after the initial rise of the concept, but without the naming. It was in the 1920s, around 1925, with Napoleon Hill. So that was the first time when it was coined. And then it was further explained in his book, Think and Grow Rich. And the idea behind it is to have a group of people meeting on a regular basis for a specific goal, which is exactly what we're doing here. So we're meeting every month for an objective, which is to imagine the future of learning, of working, of being, of the environment, our future as human beings. And that's the main idea behind that. And the power of mastermind is that it really dives into not just the individual minds, but with the collective mind that comes from it. Just a few examples from the past. Did you know that one of the founding fathers of the United States, so Benjamin Franklin, had his own mastermind? And he was at the end of his teens, beginning of his early 20s, and he gathered people that he knew from completely different backgrounds, people in business, in different types of businesses, and they would meet every week for 1 hour and discuss topics related to, at the time, the hot topics were philosophy, morale, and all of that, but also about politics and business, so how they can support each other. And they do that every single week. They'd come together, they'd have a series of questions, they support each other. If there's one information that one business person knows and that could be helpful to another, they'd share it with them. And it builds trust, it builds engagement, communication, collaboration, insights. And at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the year, you end up with much more insights, much more potential, much more power than you would have without the existence of this mastermind. And so this is a topic I'm very passionate about, because I've experienced firsthand what a mastermind can do and how it can really transform a way of thinking, a way of doing things, how the system of accountability works, how the sharing and the story sharing and the knowledge sharing and the experience sharing can really boost and motivate and inspire and work as a springboard for becoming more and for doing more. And this is very much related to what you said at the beginning, Paul, which is it's as simple as two people coming together. This is how grass movement starts. This is how mastermind starts. And that's absolutely magical. But I will also want to tap into something else, because you talked about the open source. We talked a lot about the open source movement. And basically, the open source movement is building something and sharing it with the world. And communities are very much part of this process. So I'd like to know more about open source as an outcome of communities. How does that work? How does that function? How does that come out of the process of community building? And how open source can contribute in turn to community building?
That's a really good link. And that's sort of the key to the process. People don't think about it, but when you have a term like open source, which classically it's been applied for software, people, just talk about a software that is either open access to the code so anyone can see how it's written, or fully open to collaboration so anyone can rewrite and put up updates to the code. Effectively, that's what we've already been doing in communication in our communities for generations. That's how societies work. We pool resources. As you said in the mastermind model, we pool our experiences and we pool our insights so that we can help each other. The open source model is a description of what we're already trying to do in communities, but it's also got some additional benefits and a couple of features that I'd like to go over. Because there's this sort of a disconnect between the software side of open source and what we can practically do in our own lives, a lot of people don't really think any further with it. But we've sort of forgotten that the key to community interaction is sharing resources. Effectively, there are a lot of movements that have been started throughout the world. For example, the guerrilla gardening movement, great example. Back in the 1960s and 70s in the United States, it was a movement that was started to sort of mildly anarchistically resist the powers that be. If there was an open plot of land, community space that wasn't being used, or that might have been purchased to become a parking lot at some point in the future, an undefined future, people would jump over the fence and they would replant it to be a community garden that was bearing fruit, that was actively feeding the community. And this is something that was done despite the fact that it was technically not entirely legal. There are a lot of different movements like this and sharings of information and technology. The entire DIY movement that's going on right now is a huge example of it. Makerspaces, hackerspaces. They're people who want to empower others to live in a do-ocracy, where effectively the people who come in and talk and do things are the ones who get to say which projects get worked on. And there's no reason not to have that kind of development and sharing when it comes to these open ideas and open concepts. There is the idea in the back of a lot of our minds that when I have my aha moment, my big breakthrough, I should immediately patent everything to do with it and never say another word to anyone else because they might steal the idea. But the truth is that we're all exposed to the same kinds of media. We're all having a lot of the same ideas. And the difference between someone who makes something and someone who sits on their couch and says, oh, that was my idea, they stole it from me somehow, is that one of them goes out and starts doing it. And the fastest way to do it is to find other people with similar ideas and collaborate and build something together, making it something more than just a single effort, making it, as you were saying, a part of this mastermind model. I think that that's a really key connection between the open source movement and communities. And I think that, again, the real strength of it comes from something that Alexandra had mentioned. She mentioned collective intelligence. And while we don't all, join into a hive mind, there is a strength in that when we're pooling ideas. And I'd love to hear more about your perspective on collective intelligence, if you wouldn't mind.
What not to say about collective intelligence?
Right?
We've always considered IQ as being something to brag about and something that is super important. And yes, of course, it is important because it's a way of thinking, of being capable of finding patterns around you and being able to interpret those patterns. Lately, we've also been talking a lot about EQ and the importance of emotional intelligence. But there's another word that I stumbled upon a few years ago. It was when I was in a conference in Germany, and it's called the WEQ, the WEQ. So it's the plural version of it's not about I, it's about us. So it's the WEQ. And it was coined by Ulrich Weinberg. And it's absolutely amazing because it really builds upon the power of networks. The 21st century is very much about networks. Whether we look at the information that we have, we look at the countries. If we look at COVID-19, how did it spread? Because of networks. If we look at the problem solving for COVID-19, how does it work? Networks. Everything is about networks. And it's about time that we really embrace the power of this weak you. Not my invention again. It was coined, if I'm not mistaken, by Ulrich Weinberg. But it's absolutely amazing because the power of collective intelligence is an amplification of what you can do alone. So imagine, and this is an example that is inspired by a quote by George Bernard Shaw, and he says, if you have an apple and I have an apple, and we exchange those apples, then how many apples do you end up with, Paul?
One individually.
Absolutely. But if I have an idea and you have an idea and we exchange those ideas, how many ideas do you end up with, Paul?
You keep your original. That's good. Yeah. So you've got two.
You've got two ideas. So if you're in a community of 10 people and every single person shared one idea and it took around 1 hour or 2 hours, then how many ideas you'd end up with?
Technically, it would require all of the ideas being original, but you could potentially end up with a lot more than you started with.
Exactly. Exactly. Because it's not the result of collective intelligence is not equal to the sum of the intelligences that are available. So the outcome of this discussion, of this exchange, is not necessarily the equivalent of all those ideas being added up together to make eventually the total. It's actually much more, because these ideas, they interact together. They build upon each other. They inspire more ideas. Henceforth, connections, what you said at the beginning, Paul. So with these ideas coming together, adding up, then connecting, then bringing up new ideas and new innovations and new creativity, this is how powerful collective intelligence can be. And this is how it can really drive the future. And it really goes hand in hand with what you were saying and the power of creating and putting out there. And I love what you said about this fear of hey, they're going to steal my idea. Yes, but there's all of these ideas. They're out there. They're accessible to everybody. But it's all about the action that you take after all those ideas are connected together and after you make sense of them. But I really want to bounce back on something that you said in relation to idea and to community and to open source. And it's very interesting because we're living in times of great challenges, of great transitions. And COVID-19, the least we can say is that it was disruptive. Now, what will happen after this disruption, that's a completely different story. And we can go in like a million directions. But specifically, how do you think can we build upon the power of community and the power of sharing and the power of collective intelligence in order to drive the future?
That's a really good question. And I think that's sort of the key to what everyone's going through right now. Individually, we're all coming to this point and having this same discussion. But I think part of what it comes down to is connecting all of those topics, as you were saying, taking them all and realizing that we're all just trying to find solutions, and finding solutions together seems to require empowering individuals to connect as communities so that they can both identify and solve those problems together, collectively, as you said. Because most of the history of mankind, we've been separate in so many ways. Before interconnection, before the speed of transmitting knowledge, before radio, I mean, it was a totally different world. And at the point, even 30 years ago, when we were starting to really utilize online connectivity, we were nowhere near where we are today. Instant chat with anyone, anywhere on the planet, regardless of the time of day. I mean, we take it for granted. But the sort of moment we're at represents a potential quantum leap, not only in our technology, but also in the way that we live our society and the way that we identify ourselves as human beings, because we're not different. We all eat, we all sleep, we all have needs, and we all are experiencing the same collective problems. COVID-19, climate change, all kinds of sustainability issues. And we have the room to address them together. I think that's part of the core of this, is looking at communities for what they really, really are and can be, the potential. Sorry, it's very inspiring for me. Get
It
caught
is
up in
very
it.
inspiring indeed. And what you said about, you said two words that I absolutely love, quantum leap. And this is something that we really need, not just from the perspective of technology and the result of the disruption that will come from COVID-19, but also from the way we think and live and learn and work and all of that. This quantum leap is something that we need to do in order to really tap into the power of collective intelligence and tap into the power of communities. I don't know about you, but if I want to like highlight a few ideas, a few thoughts that we've
Please.
shared since we started, I think one very important point is to realize that the power of community is conducive to the transformation of an idea into an action. And communities are extremely powerful, and sharing ideas, that's absolutely amazing, but leveraging those ideas, allowing those ideas to nurture each other and to develop into something that is potentially bigger, potentially stronger, is absolutely amazing. And I absolutely love that. And if I were to inspire or to share something with our audience now, and if they should come out with like one very single thing, is today, tomorrow morning, just connect with someone, one person or 5 people if you can, just one person, and try to exchange ideas with them. Try to have a conversation about a topic that you're passionate about, a topic that you really want to dig deeper into, or a problem that you're facing, or a problem that the community is facing. And explore through that conversation, see how things are going to unfold, how things are going to develop, how thoughts are going to enrich each other. And by doing that, it is possible to transform one IQ into a quantum IQ, which we can call WeQ. And it is possible to transform one idea into a multitude of ideas from which we can have great innovation that can eventually lead to powerful action. For me, this is how I would map things out. But how about you?
Almost precisely the same. Start with what you know and who you know. Reach out to somebody who you haven't spoken to in a while, maybe, and start a conversation. And maybe the next time, set a date in a week when you're going to have another conversation, maybe just like this. It can be socially distant. We have the technology. So do it. Go ahead and set it out. Make it a group chat eventually. But to start, just you and one other person, and talk about problems you're having. Maybe ask that person about a problem that they're having, just so that you can start solving it together. And then next week, use that to, through grassroots, as we've discussed, create your own mastermind group, your own group of individuals who want more. Find people who are hungry, just like you, people who challenge you, people who expect you to be your very best self, not just for the sake of yourself, but for your children, for your nieces and nephews if you don't have children, for your cat if all you have is a cat. I've got a cat. It's a cute cat. Anyway, do something that reaches beyond you and come together so that you can see how your ideas joining together can make something more, can make a movement, can make that collective WeQ that we've been discussing. It's really good. I think that's really a lot of the core of what we wanted to get into today. This is delicious.
I think so too. I feel very satiated, and I think it's amazing how these conversations, like, they can lead to completely different things. I suppose you know that Paul and I already had planned with all of this, and we knew more or less. Okay, I have an electricity cut. I'm in Lebanon, by the way. All the things are shut down around me, which is very relevant to the current circumstances and the challenges related to COVID-19 and some other crisis happening. Anyways, the show must go on, whatever happens. And part of the discussion that we had is that we had these ideas that we wanted to share, but we were not sure how the conversation exactly was going to unfold, because every conversation is different. And electricity is back. So every conversation is different, and every single moment has to be explored with depth, with attention, with presence, because it can lead to wonderful exchanges and wonderful conclusions that you have not planned or that you have might have not expected at the beginning. And this is the power of communities and exchange and conversation. And because we want this conversation to be not just a one-time thing and not just a one-way conversation, because we want it more enriched, the idea is to have this type of exchange and mastermind space every single month. So happening between happening between the Time Repair Corporation and between PersEd under the title of Interchange. So, which brings me to drum rolls. The fact that we are going to sort of soft launch the next episode, which will happen last Wednesday of the month of August. And I will not tell you what the topic is, but Paul and I are going to share with you a riddle. And I hope you're going to have fun with it. He will start the first part of the riddle, and we're going to do some back and forth to get you a bit on a suspense mode.
And we'll write this out in the comments as well so that you can, view it there. But let's get things started. My first is an article.
My second lies at the intersection.
My third usually comes in pairs, but can be reduced to one or none. And some believe in the existence of a third.
And my fourth, which is also my last, is the brief origin of a word. So a brief origin of a word. Don't worry, we'll be sharing the riddle with you in the comment on Facebook. And we will be waiting for you to come back to us with an answer. Hopefully you will know what we're talking about. If not, or if you're curious to know the answer, well, you have to hop in the next session to discover effectively what topic we will be discussing, which is very much related to the idea of us humans, of our personal development, and also related to the context in which we are living. I'm not going to say anything more about that topic. Paul, do you have any last few words that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yeah. I want to encourage all of you to go out there, and I'm going to attempt to do this myself as well. So join me and contact a friend, as I was saying. Reach out to somebody and share the riddle with them. See if you can work it out together. It's a perfect way to start a conversation. And even if you guys don't figure it out, you can start this other conversation and then start addressing whatever it is that matters to you most. Maybe there's something hitting really close to home that's giving you some, some worry. If there is, then great. Start jumping into it together. Talk to a friend, a family member you haven't spoken to in a while, and try to solve this riddle together. Come back to us with the answer if you can. And when you do, use the hashtag inter_change. That's INTER underscore change to tell us what you learned from it. Take a selfie of yourselves and throw that into Instagram, otherwise tag it in Facebook, but use that hashtag interchange. We're going to be using that to talk about what we're doing here as we move forward, but we'd love to get a head start on it. And if anyone who you know is interested in knowing more, link them to this video. We're going to be putting it up on the Time Repair Corporation YouTube channel. So you'll be able to subscribe to the Time Repair Corporation YouTube channel. Do the thing. Do it immediately. And follow us for the next one, as we're going to see live through the PersEd blog and blast it out on all of our social media channels. Go and, enjoy your community. Build it up to everything it can be.
And perhaps little by little transform that community, that larger community. Try to help it, try to support it, try to create beautiful things with it, and through it, tap into the power of the collective intelligence that you can hone. And I think this is something that we all need, especially in these times, especially when there's so much uncertainty around us. Paul and I wanted to make this as brief as possible, as light and enjoyable as possible. So we're going to stop now. We're going to post the riddle in the comment box so that you can enjoy it with someone, with a friend, with a family member, with your cat. Paul, you said you had a cute cat. So share it and think about it. Also write to us if you have a feedback, if you have question, if you have a topic that you'd like to discuss. Drop us a message, either the Time Repair Corp or PersEd, and let's make this a two-way conversation. Let's transform this opportunity into an opportunity for collective intelligence. I hope you're going to say a big fat yes. If so, type yes in the comment. We'd love to see that energy coming back at us. And we wish you a great evening, a great morning, a great afternoon, wherever you are, whatever time of the day it is for you, and enjoy the rest of the week.
All the best to you.